Today's episode of Voiced is from r/petty revenge and is about a cunning landlord, a boss facing unforeseen consequences, and a dinner that turned the tables on some friends. What surprising twists await in each of these petty paybacks? Subscribe if you enjoy.
The real estate company that owns my apartment thought they could intimidate my roommates and me into signing a new, poorer contract, but ended up getting bitten by their own laziness. In Germany, it is common to have indefinite rental contracts, which do not have a set end date and remain in effect until termination, usually by the tenant. I live in Germany, which has extremely strong tenants' rights. I've been living in my apartment for about 8 years now. About 1 year after I first moved in, I got a letter from the company that owns my apartment building. In short, it said this: "Dear Mr. X, we are canceling your existing rental contract. If you wish to continue renting this apartment, please sign this new contract with higher rent or move out within 30 days. This scared the hell out of me. I was living in a city where the rent prices were skyrocketing, and I had only just managed to find a long-term apartment I could afford. As soon as I began looking at my options, it became clear that I was either going to have to fight what was essentially an eviction or move back to the United States and start building my life again, just after I had finally found some stability. After I asked around a bit, someone tipped me off to something called a Mieterverein, which is essentially a nonprofit group that advocates for tenants' rights and gives its members the opportunity to get legal advice regarding their rights as tenants. I looked one up near me and booked it over to their office. I explained my situation, filled out some paperwork, and went to speak with the group's lawyer. I showed her the letter and my current contract, and she looked over it for a few minutes without saying a word. After what felt like an eternity, she looked at me and said in her most diplomatic German legalese, "You have nothing to worry about. This letter is nonsense," admittedly paraphrased, but that's what it boiled down to. She then turned to a page of the contract and pointed out a single line in it: "No changes may be made to this contract unless both parties consent to the proposed changes." In other words, as long as I refuse to sign the new contract, they cannot do anything to me. The group's lawyer then sent a letter on my behalf to the company. I received a copy of it for my records, and essentially, it told the company that they would find themselves in some major trouble with the government if they continued to pursue the matter further. About a month went by, and I heard nothing further. Then, one day, a letter from the company arrived. The company basically admitted defeat and tried to cover its tail by saying that the letter was sent in error by an employee who is no longer with the company. For the next 7 years, it became an annual ritual. The company sends an ominous letter telling me I'm getting kicked out. I forward the letter to the Mieterverein, and the Mieterverein's lawyer sends them a letter telling them to stick the letter where the sun doesn't shine. And then, after attempt number 8, the lawyer sent them another letter telling them to cut the nonsense and stop sending these letters every year. I haven't heard from them since.
Wow, what a roller coaster of emotions in that previous story. It's incredible how one person's attempt to undermine someone else's stability can backfire spectacularly when they underestimate the rights and resilience of their tenants. It's a testament to the power of knowing your rights and the strength of community support. And speaking of unexpected outcomes, the next story showcases a different kind of workplace drama that evolves over time. It's about an artist who found themselves at a crossroads after being let go from a studio. Instead of defeat, this was the catalyst for a flourishing career. Sometimes losing one opportunity leads to discovering another that's even brighter. Let's dive into that transformative journey.
3 years ago, I was fired from a stained glass studio where I worked as an artist, glass painter, and designer for being vocal about company safety. The owner made me the safety person because I had come from a studio that took safety seriously. I read occupational safety and health administration manuals and gave so many suggestions about unsafe practices we had in the studio handling lead, acid, and other dangerous materials. After a few years of my suggestions being mostly ignored, someone, actually not me, called Occupational Safety and Health Administration during COVID, when my coworkers were not masking. The boss suspected it was me since I was the most vocal about safety, and they rehired my replacement shortly after, removed my safety person duties, and fired me after enough time had passed that it wouldn't look suspicious. They cited lack of work, but had just hired someone and were firing me instead. It doesn't add up. All in all, this was a place where my contributions and expertise were largely unacknowledged and unappreciated. At the time, I had been pursuing my own work as an artist. When I was fired, I had no idea how or if I would be able to make ends meet in Los Angeles, but I did. In fact, this firing was the best thing that could have happened for my career. Last night, I saw this boss owner at an event. The studio is doing so poorly that he had to cut everyone's hours to 2 days a week. Many people are looking for new jobs. He said, "I heard you had a show. And yes, I actually have a solo show up with a major gallery, have more than $30,000 in savings, and so much work on the horizon I'm booked through 2026. I said, "Yes, things are going really well," and flashed him a huge smile. Success is truly the best revenge. Thanks to everyone who is sharing their own stories of living well after being fired from a bad job or toxic workplace. The number one comment I'm getting is, "Who tells someone how much they have in savings?" Laughing out loud. I didn't. I only said the part in quotes. The other information is for you, the reader, to know to help you understand where I'm coming from. Also, this boss didn't tell me how bad the studio is doing. I learned that from former co-workers I saw at the event. The crazy thing is he literally cut hours that day, so everyone was still quite upset.
Wow, it sounds like the first post is a powerful reminder of how disempowerment can often turn into empowerment, and that sometimes the path forward is paved by the very setbacks we experience. This artist took a difficult situation and transformed it into a thriving career, all while sending a clear message to their former boss about the consequences of ignoring safety and talent. Now, shifting gears to our next story, we have a dad who finds himself in an unexpected social situation filled with snobbish attitudes. After being mocked for his profession, he decides to turn the tables in a way that's both humorous and heartening. Join us as we dive into a situation where misjudgments collide with revealing truths, leaving everyone astonished. Stay tuned. My daughter, 17, asked me to post this here, and I'm the dad who does as the women in my life tell me, which is how I ended up in a restaurant tonight with Snobs. So the characters: my wife, wife's coworker 1 and her husband, arrogant engineer 1, AE1, wife's coworker 2 and her husband, my certified public accountant, and lastly, AE2 and his wife. Each couple has 2 teenage children with us. We are at a Japanese steakhouse in America where the chefs cook in front of you. CW1 and AE1 invited all of us for their youngest daughter's birthday, since their daughter is close with our daughter. So the parents are at one table and the teens at another. At the teen table, my daughters, 17 and 14, order sushi appetizers, mocktails, and shrimp with scallops. At our table, the sake is flowing along with a few top-shelf drinks. My wife and I order our appetizers, drinks, and dinners. We are all paying for ourselves, and I see AE1 and AE2 seem to be in competition for who can spend the most. My CPA and I chuckle at them and stay out of the fray, until AE2 hears my daughter order and says to her, "Careful now, your daddy is only an agricultural engineer. He doesn't make as much as us real engineers." For context, they are structural engineers with bachelor degrees. I am an agricultural engineer with a PhD. I work for governments, private investors, and several agricultural corporations. I own my own consulting firm. I help build sustainable, reusable gardens. This work allows me to travel to poorer countries and help them use what they have to start growing their own food. Apparently, these men thought all I did was travel to impoverished places and teach people to dig in the dirt. They believed I did all this work for free and therefore made very little money. I'm not rich by any stretch, but I'm comfortable. We don't do extravagance, so we have savings and my wife works. However, in 2023, I was awarded a handsome contract to design tower gardens in several states. It's a 7-figure contract over 3 years. Back to dinner. These guys ask me about the most ridiculous things. Like, is it good to grow onions and carrots in the same garden? And were laughing at me and my work until their wives told them to stop. I chalk it up to drunken arrogance and don't even bother to answer. My certified public accountant was laughing so hard he almost fell out of his chair. Apparently, he is AE1's certified public accountant as well, and knows the ins and outs of both our finances. AE1 taunts the certified public accountant to tell the table what he brought home last year after bonuses. CPA pulled up the figures on the phone and tells us, "It's about 1/3 of what I brought home in 2023. The certified public accountant says, "I have yours up. Want me to share?" I decline, and he nods. Cue another round of taunts. I go to the restroom and find the waiter. I pay for the whole check and leave a generous tip on top of what they added for a big party. After our sobering moment, the waiter thanks me in front of everyone for the tip and wishes everyone a good night. AE1 and AE2 stare at me for a moment. I smile, nod, and tell CPA to tell them my income last year, after which I simply said good night. Petty absolutely, gratifying you bet. Before I dive into today's posts, please consider subscribing for more engaging stories. Wow, today's posts really showcase some incredible triumphs against adversity. The first story highlights not only the power of knowing your rights as a tenant, but also the relentless spirit of our main character in dealing with a nightmare landlord. What a satisfying win. The second post had a huge glow-up moment, going from being belittled by a former boss to flaunting a successful art career. And how about that last one? The sneaky joy of one-upmanship at that dinner table, seeing those engineers eat their words after underestimating an agricultural engineer's worth. What are your thoughts on these stories? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Voiced. If you enjoyed daily high-quality stories, please like and subscribe to show your support.